The massive doors of the council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Li Huan walked through them, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and formal. Behind him followed Kim Yuna, her military medals catching the strange blue light that filled the enormous room. They had waited 3 months for this moment, 3 months since humanity had asked to join the Galactic Council as full members. The chamber was bigger than any building on Earth. 7 platforms floated in the center, each one holding a different alien species. These were the Council of 7, the rulers of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Li Huan had studied each of them for months, but seeing them in person still made his heart race. The Vorthak floated on the first platform, their crystal, bodies catching light and throwing it back in sharp colors. They were the oldest members of the council. Some said they had lived for millions of years. Next to them were the Luminari, beings of pure light and gas who spoke through color changes, instead of words. On the third platform stood the Kelthani, tall and thin with 6 arms and skin like metal. The fourth held the massive Grokan, creatures that looked like living rocks with glowing eyes. The fifth platform was empty, except for a shimmering field where the energy beings called the Nethrall lived. The sixth platform held the Zephyrians, bird-like creatures with wings that never stopped moving. And on the seventh, the newest members of the council were the Altarians. They looked almost human, but their skin was blue and their eyes were solid black. Humans of Earth, the voice of the Vorthak rang out, clear as a bell but cold as ice. You have come before us seeking membership in our council. We have considered your request. Li Huan stepped forward. This was the moment his entire species had been waiting for. Humanity had been exploring space for 200 years. They had built colonies on 47 worlds. They had made contact with dozens of alien species. Now they wanted to join the galactic community as equals. We thank the Council for their consideration, Li Huan said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Humanity is ready to take its place among the civilized species of the galaxy. The Luminari's colors shifted from blue to red, which Kim Yuna knew meant displeasure. She had spent years learning alien body language, and nothing she saw looked good. That is the problem, said the Kelthani representative, their voice coming from speakers because humans could not hear their natural speech. You are not civilized. You are dangerous. Kim Yuna felt her hand move toward her weapon before she stopped herself. This was not the time for the very behavior they were being accused of. Dangerous? Li Huan asked. We have never attacked any council member. We have followed all galactic laws. We have even helped other species when they asked. Yes, said the massive Grokan, their voice like rocks grinding together. That is exactly the problem. You helped when you should not have helped. You fought when you should have stayed away. You saved species that were meant to die. The humans looked at each other in confusion. Li Huan thought about the Keldon-Morthi War, where human forces had stopped 2 alien species from destroying each other completely. It had been the right thing to do. How could saving lives be wrong? The Vorthak's crystal body began to glow brighter. The war between the Keldon and the Morthi had lasted for 300 years. It was their natural path. They were meant to fight until the stronger survived and the weaker died. This is how nature works. This is how the galaxy stays in balance. But we saved both species, Kim Yuna said, unable to stay quiet any longer. They are both alive now. They are even working together. Which is against the natural order, the Altarian representative said. Their voice sounded human, but there was no warmth in it. You humans always do this. You see suffering and you try to stop it. You see conflict and you try to solve it. You make friends with species that should be enemies. You give technology to races that are not ready for it. Li Huan felt a cold weight in his stomach. This was not going the way he had hoped. Are you saying that helping others is wrong? We are saying that your species is unpredictable, the Nethrol representative said, their voice coming from the empty air like wind through leaves. In 10,000 years, the Council has brought peace to the galaxy. We have rules. We have order. Species develop naturally without interference. The strong survive. The weak serve or die. This creates stability. But you helped other species join the Council, Kim Yuna pointed out. You gave them technology and knowledge. We helped species that proved they were ready, the Zephyrian said, their wings creating small whirlwinds as they spoke. Species that showed they could follow rules, species that understood their place in the natural order. You humans do not. The Vorthak rose higher on their platform, and their crystal body blazed with light. In 200 years, your species has grown too fast. You have spread to too many worlds. You have made contact with too many other races. Most disturbing of all, you have made them like you. Like us? Li Huan asked. Emotional, the Grokan said with disgust. Before humans came, the Keldon and Morthy fought with honor. They followed the old ways. Now they work together like friends. The Taurians used to be proper servants to their masters. Now they ask for equal treatment because humans taught them they deserved it. Li Huan began to understand. The Council was not upset because humanity was evil or destructive. They were upset because humanity changed things. Because they made friends instead of following strict social orders. Because they helped the weak instead of letting them die. The galaxy has been peaceful for 10,000 years because every species knows its place, the Luminari said, through flashing colors that the translation machines turned into words. The strong rule, the weak serve, and everyone follows the natural order. Humans do not fit this pattern. So what are you saying? Kim Yuna asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. The 7 platforms moved closer together, and the council members seemed to become one voice. Humanity is expelled from civilized space. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from council territory. This includes all colonies, all ships, all stations, and all personnel. The words hit Li Huan like a physical blow. You are exiling our entire species? We are preserving the peace of the galaxy, the Vorthak said. There are regions beyond, the void barrier, where no civilized species goes. The space there is hostile and empty. You will go there, and you will not return. Kim Yuna stepped forward. And if we refuse? The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then, we will use force to remove you. The Council has fleets that have kept peace for 10,000 years. Do not test us. Li Huan felt like the floor was falling away beneath his feet. In one day, humanity had gone from hoping to join the galactic community to being cast out of it entirely, all because they cared too much, helped too much, and refused to let others suffer when they could prevent it. The decision is final, the Council said together. Humanity will leave civilized space and never return. The galaxy will return to its proper order. The massive doors opened again. The meeting was over. As Li Huan and Kim Yuna walked out, they knew that everything had changed. Humanity was alone again, cast out by the very qualities that made them human. Park Jimin stared at the numbers on his screen and rubbed his tired eyes. 847 colonies, 463 space stations, 12 major shipyards, 300 million humans scattered across Council space, all needing to be moved in 30 days. It was impossible. Sir? His assistant, a young woman named Ko Yunbi, stood in the doorway of his office. The emergency assembly is ready for your report. Park Jimin nodded and picked up his datapad. As head of the colonial administration, it was his job to tell humanity's leaders just how impossible their situation was. He walked through the corridors of Luna Station, humanity's government center orbiting Earth's moon. Every face he passed looked worried and scared. The assembly hall was packed. Representatives from every human colony and major corporation were there, either in person or through hologram. At the center of the room, a large display showed the galaxy with human territories marked in blue. It was a lot of blue, spread across thousands of light years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Park Jimin began, "I will not lie to you. What the Council is asking is nearly impossible. We have 30 days to evacuate 847 worlds. Even if we use every ship we have, civilian and military, we can maybe move half our people in that time." The room erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted questions and demands. Park Jimin raised his hand for quiet. "However," he continued, "we do have options. We can abandon the outer colonies first and focus on the core worlds. We can leave behind everything that cannot be easily moved and focus on saving lives. And we can ask the Council for more time." "They will not give us more time," said a voice from the back. Everyone turned to see Choi Min-ho walking down the center aisle. He was humanity's best expert on void space, the dangerous region beyond civilized territory. His white hair was messy and his clothes looked like he had been working for days without sleep. "The Council wants us gone," Choi Min-ho said as he reached the front of the room. "But I have a better idea than running back to Earth with our tails between our legs." He activated the large display, and the image of the galaxy changed. Now it showed the void barrier, a region of space marked in red that surrounded the civilized. Galaxy like a wall. "For 50 years I have been studying the void," Choi Min-ho said. "Everyone thinks it is empty space, too dangerous for life. But our long-range sensors have found something interesting. There are structures out there. Big ones, and they are artificial." The room went quiet. Park Jimin leaned forward. "What kind of structures?" "Unknown. But they are huge, maybe the size of moons, and they are connected by some kind of energy network." "I think someone built them long ago and then left them behind." A colony representative stood up. "Are you suggesting we go into the void? That is suicide. The energy storms alone will tear our ships apart." "Not if we use the new void drives," Choi Min-ho said with a smile. "I have been working on them in secret for 20 years. They can punch through the barrier and get us to the other side safely. Most of the time." "Most of the time?" Park Jimin asked. "Maybe 70% chance of success per ship," Choi Min-ho admitted. "But if we stay here, the Council will destroy us completely. In the void, we have a chance to build something new." Before anyone could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the station. The display changed to show an incoming priority message. The face of Song Hae-un appeared, her ship's captain uniform torn and dirty. "This is Captain Song reporting from Deep Space Reconnaissance," she said. "I have just returned from a scouting mission beyond the void barrier. Dr. Choi was right about the structures. They are there, and they are incredible." The room was completely silent now. Song Haeun's face was excited, but also frightened. I took my ship through a weak spot in the barrier 3 days ago, she continued. The journey was rough, but we made it through. On the other side, we found a network of massive space stations, each one bigger than anything the Council has ever built. They appear to be automated factories of some kind, still running after who knows how many years. Park Jimin felt his heart racing. Are they inhabited? Not by living beings, Song Haeun replied. But they are not empty. The stations are harvesting something from space itself, some kind of exotic matter that our sensors cannot identify. And there is something else. The stations have been sending signals deeper into the void, toward something our long-range sensors cannot see. The assembly hall erupted again, but this time with excitement instead of fear. Representatives began talking quickly about possibilities and plans. Park Jimin banged his gavel for order. Captain Song, he said, what is your recommendation? Song. Haeun's image smiled grimly. Sir, I recommend we take Dr. Choi's plan seriously. The void is dangerous, but it is not empty. There is something out there worth exploring. Something that might give us a new home and new possibilities. Choi Minho stepped forward again. I have been preparing for this day for decades. We have prototype void drives ready for mass production. We have ships that can survive the journey, and now we know there is something worth finding on the other side. How long will it take to prepare? Park Jimin asked. For the first wave of colony ships? 2 weeks. We can have 50,000 people through the barrier before the council deadline. After that, we can send ships every few days until everyone is evacuated. An older woman in a military uniform stood up. Park Jimin recognized her as General Nam Sejong, head of colonial defense. This is a huge risk, she said. We will be abandoning everything we have built in council space, our homes, our history, our connections to other species. For what? Unknown structures in dangerous space? For freedom, said a young voice from the crowd. Everyone turned to see a teenager who had somehow gotten into the restricted assembly. For the chance to be ourselves, without the council telling us we are wrong for caring about others. The girl was right, Park Jimin realized. The council had not exiled humanity because they were evil or destructive. They had exiled them because they were different, because they made friends instead of servants, because they helped the weak instead of abandoning them. All in favor of Dr. Choi's plan? Park Jimin called out. Hands rose throughout the room. Not everyone, but most. Enough to make the decision. Then we go into the void, Park Jimin announced. We leave council space not as exiles, but as explorers. We will build something new out there, something better than what we are leaving behind. The assembly hall filled with cheers and applause. Song Haeun's image saluted from her ship. Choi Minho began talking excitedly with engineers about production schedules, but Park Jimin felt a chill despite the excitement. Song Haeun had mentioned signals going deeper into the void toward something their sensors could not see. What was out there in the darkness beyond the ancient stations? And why had whoever built those stations left them behind? He pushed the worry aside. Humanity had faced the unknown before and survived. They would do it again. But as he watched, the colonists and politicians planning their exodus, Park Jimin could not shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than anyone realized. The great exodus was beginning, and there would be no turning back. Nam Tae-hyung gripped the arms of his captain's chair as the massive colony ship New Seoul shook violently. Through the bridge windows, he could see the void storm raging around them. Lightning that was not quite lightning crackled through space. and the stars themselves seemed to twist and bend in impossible ways. "Hull stress at 80%, called out his engineer, a steady woman named Beck Sora. "We are still holding together, but barely. Behind them, 199 other ships fought their way through the void barrier. The fleet carried 200,000 humans, everything they could save from the outer colonies before the council deadline. It was the largest group to attempt the crossing so far. "Sir," said his navigation officer, a young man called Yu Dojin, "we are getting distress signals from the Busan. Their void drive is failing." Nam Tai-hyung closed his eyes for a moment. The Busan carried 15,000 people, including many families with children. "Can we help them?" "Negative, sir. If we break formation now, we will lose the navigation beacon. We could all be lost in the storm." It was the hardest decision Nam Tae-hyung had ever made, but he knew that saving 200,000 people was more important than risking them all for 15,000. "Send them our best wishes and continue on course." The void storm raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, Nam Tae-hyung counted his fleet. 188 ships remained. 12 ships and 37,000 people were gone, including the Busan, but the majority had survived, and they were through the barrier. "Sir," Yu Dojin said quietly, "you need to see this." Nam Tai-hyung looked at the main display and forgot how to breathe. Ahead of them was a sight that no human had ever imagined. Massive structures floated in the darkness, each one the size of a small moon. They were connected by streams of energy that stretched across light years, creating a web of power that lit up the void. "My God," whispered Baksora, "what are they?" "Our new home," Nam Tae-hyung said, though he was not sure he believed it himself. The structures were clearly artificial, but they followed no design philosophy that humans understood. They were smooth and organic-looking, like they had grown instead of being built. Strange lights pulsed along their surfaces in patterns that seemed almost like heartbeats. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the lead science ship," reported his communications officer. "Dr. Oh Soo-young wants permission to take a team aboard one of the structures." Nam Tai-hyung nodded. Oh Soo-young was humanity's best expert on alien archaeology. If anyone could figure out what these things were, it would be her. 2 hours later, Oh Soo-young's shuttle approached the nearest structure. She had brought a team of 6 specialists, including an engineer, a computer expert, and 2 security guards. As they got closer, the structure seemed to grow larger and larger until it filled their entire view. "There," said her pilot, pointing to what looked like a docking bay. "That opening looks like it might be an entrance." The shuttle docked with a soft thump that echoed through the hull. Oh Soo-young checked her environmental suit one more time before opening the hatch. The air beyond was breathable according to their sensors, but she was not taking any chances. The interior of the structure was even more amazing than the outside. Corridors stretched in every direction, lit by panels that glowed with soft blue light. The walls were covered in symbols that moved and changed as they watched. "The symbols are some kind of computer interface," said her computer expert, a brilliant young woman named Seo Jung-ga. "They are responding to our presence, trying to communicate with us." Oh Soo-young approached one of the walls and placed her hand on it. Immediately, the symbols began changing faster, and she felt a strange tingling in her mind. Images flashed before her eyes, star maps, mathematical equations, and something that looked like historical records. "I am getting something," she said. The structure is trying to teach us its language. It wants us to understand. For 3 hours, the team explored the structure. What they found was incredible. The entire thing was an automated factory, designed to harvest exotic matter from the void itself and convert it into usable materials. But it was more than that. It was also a library, containing vast amounts of information about its builders. They called themselves the architects, Oh Soo-young reported back to Nam Tae-hyung. They were an incredibly advanced species that existed millions of years ago. They built this entire network of stations for a specific purpose. What purpose? Nam Tae-hyung asked. Defense, Oh Soo-young said quietly. They built these stations to protect the galaxy from something they called the hunger from beyond. But the records are not complete. I need more time to understand what they were defending against. Nam Tae-hyung looked at the web of structures surrounding his fleet. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all connected by energy streams that pulsed with power. The architects had built an entire civilization out here in the void, and then they had abandoned it. Dr. O, he said, are the stations still functional? Completely functional, she replied with excitement in her voice. They have been running automatically for millions of years, waiting for someone to claim them. The architects designed them to accept new operators if the originals ever disappeared. New operators? Us, Oh Soo-young said simply. The stations recognize us as intelligent life. They want us to take over their functions and continue their mission. Nam Tae-hyung felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The humans had come to the void as exiles, looking for a place to hide from the council. Instead, they had found something incredible, a ready-made civilization with technology far beyond anything in council space. But why had the architects abandoned it? What was this hunger from beyond that had scared an advanced species so much they left their greatest creation behind? Sir, called Sora from her engineering station, the stations are sending us docking instructions. They want us to come aboard. Nam Tae-hyung made his decision. Signal the fleet. We are accepting their invitation. Begin docking procedures with the nearest stations. It looks like humanity has found its new home. As the colony ships moved toward the ancient structures, Nam Tae-hyung watched the energy streams pulse between the stations. They looked like a vast nervous system, connecting the structures into one enormous entity. The humans were about to become part of something much larger than themselves. He just hoped they were ready for whatever came next. Over the following days, more human ships arrived through the void barrier. Some carried colonists from the inner worlds. Others brought equipment and supplies saved from the abandoned colonies. A few carried news from Council space. The aliens were already moving in to claim former human territories, dividing up the abandoned worlds among themselves. But the humans were no longer concerned with what they had left behind. They were too busy learning about their new home. The architect stations were marvels of technology that made Council science look primitive. They could create matter from energy, reshape space itself, and communicate across vast distances instantly. More importantly, they were connected to sensors that reached deep into the void, watching for something that had not yet come. The record spoke of the hunger from beyond, an entity so terrible that the architects had chosen to leave physical existence rather than face it. As Nam Tae-hyung stood on the observation deck of his new home, watching human children play in gardens that grew under artificial suns, he wondered if humanity was strong enough to face whatever had frightened the architects. The council had exiled them because they were too dangerous and unpredictable. Perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Lim Jae-wan stared at the flowing symbols on the wall until his eyes hurt. For 3 weeks, he had been working to decode the architect language, and finally he was beginning to understand. The symbols were not just writing, they were living, information that changed and grew as you read them. "I think I have something," he called to his team. Around him, linguists and computer experts worked at dozens of terminals, each one connected to the vast architect database. They were inside the central archive of Station Alpha, the largest structure in the network. SEO Junga looked up from her computer. "What kind of something?" "A historical record," Lim Jae-wan said, his voice shaking with excitement. "I think it is the story of what happened to the architects, why they built these stations and where they went." He activated the main display and symbols flowed across it like water. As they watched, the symbols changed into images that their minds could understand. It was like watching a movie, but one that was transmitted directly into their thoughts. The story began millions of years ago, when the architects were a young species exploring their galaxy. They were not physical beings like humans, but creatures of pure energy who could take any shape they wanted. They had built a vast civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. Then they discovered something terrible in the void beyond their galaxy, something they called the Devourers. The Devourers are not a single species, Lim Jae-wan read from the flowing text. They are a collective consciousness that consumes entire galaxies. They turn matter and energy into extensions of themselves, spreading like a disease across the universe. The images showed galaxies being consumed, their stars going dark one by one until nothing remained but empty space. The Devourers moved from galaxy to galaxy, leaving nothing behind but void. The architects tried to fight them, Lim Jae-wan continued. They built weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could stop time itself. Nothing worked. The Devourers adapted to every attack, learned from every defense. Young So-min, who had been elected as humanity's leader in the void, stood up from her chair. She had been listening to the translation while coordinating the settlement of 300,000 humans across 50 architect stations. "So they ran away?" she asked. "No," Lim Jae-wan said quietly. "They evolved beyond physical existence. They became something that the Devourers could not consume because they were no longer made of matter or energy in any form the Devourers could understand." The images showed the final days of the architect civilization. Their greatest minds worked together to transcend physical reality entirely, leaving behind their bodies and their technology to exist as pure consciousness in a dimension beyond space and time. "But they did not abandon their galaxy," Lim Jae-wan said. "Before they transcended, they built this network of stations as a barrier. The stations create a field that hides the galaxy from the Devourer's senses. As long as the network operates, the galaxy remains invisible." Young So-min felt a cold weight in her stomach. "Are you saying that we are now responsible for protecting the entire galaxy?" "Not just our galaxy," Seo Junga said from her terminal. "I am reading records of 17 other galaxies that the architects tried to save. The networks protecting them have all failed over the millions of years since the architects left. Our galaxy is the last one still hidden." The room went silent except for the soft humming of the architect technology. Every human in the archive understood what this meant. The Council had exiled humanity because they thought humans were too dangerous. But the real danger was out there in the deep void, and humanity was now the only thing standing between it and everything they had ever known. "There is more," Lim Jae-wan said. The stations have been monitoring the void for millions of years, watching for signs that the devourers have found us. According to the sensors, something has changed in the last few decades. The devourers are getting closer. Young So-min walked to one of the archive terminals and placed her hand on it. The architect interface responded to her touch, showing her star maps that stretched across the entire universe. She could see the dark zones where galaxies used to be, all consumed by the devourers, and she could see the movement patterns that suggested they were searching for the last hidden galaxy. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The computer estimates between 50 and 100 years before they break through the barrier," Lim Jae-wan replied. "Maybe less if something draws their attention to us." Young So-min thought about the irony of their situation. Humanity had been cast out by the Council for being too aggressive and unpredictable. Now those same qualities might be the galaxy's only hope. The Council species were too civilized, too orderly, too set in their ways to adapt to a threat like the Devourers. But humans specialized in impossible situations. "What do the records say about fighting them?" she asked. "The architects tried everything," Seo Junga said. "Conventional weapons, exotic physics, reality warping technology. The Devourers adapted to all of it. The only thing that worked was transcending physical existence entirely." "But we cannot do that," Young So-min said. "We are still physical beings. We still need food and air and gravity." "Actually," Lim Jae-wan said with a strange smile, "the architects anticipated this problem. The stations are not just defensive barriers. They are also evolution chambers, designed to help other species develop beyond their physical limitations." He activated another display showing technical specifications that hurt to look at directly. The architect technology could enhance human abilities in ways that seemed impossible. Enhanced intelligence, expanded consciousness, even the ability to exist partially outside normal space-time. "The process is voluntary and gradual," Lim Jae-wan explained. "Humans who choose it would slowly develop new abilities while remaining essentially human, but it would take generations to complete. And we do not have generations." Young So-min looked around the archive at her fellow humans. They were scientists and linguists, not soldiers or heroes, but they were also the descendants of a species that had climbed out of caves to reach for the stars. If anyone could find a way to fight an impossible enemy, it would be humanity. "Send a message to all station commanders," she said. "I want every human settlement to begin training with architect technology immediately. We need to learn everything these stations can teach us." "What about the Council?" asked Seo Junga. "Should we warn them about the Devourers?" Young So-min thought about the Council's reaction to humanity's request for membership. They had been so certain that their way was the only way, so confident that their 10,000 years of peace made them wise. Not yet, she decided. They would not believe us, and they might try to shut down the barrier network thinking it was dangerous. We need to be ready to protect them whether they want our protection or not. Over the following weeks, reports came in from stations throughout the network. Human scientists were learning to use architect technology at an incredible rate. The stations seemed to respond to human curiosity and adaptability, revealing secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. But the most important discovery came from the deep void sensors. Lim Jae-wan was working late one night when the alert came in. The sensors had detected something moving in the darkness between galaxies, something vast and hungry that had noticed a flicker in the barrier network. The Devourers had found them. Jung, Soman stood on the observation deck of Station Alpha and looked out at the web of energy that connected hundreds of ancient structures. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, an enemy that had consumed entire galaxies was turning its attention toward the Milky Way. The Council had exiled humanity for being too dangerous to live among civilized species. Soon, they would discover that humanity's dangerous nature was the only thing that could save them all. Kang Wusung had been staring into the deep void for 6 hours when his sensors detected something impossible. The exploration vessel Dauntless was positioned at the edge of the Architect network, watching for signs of the approaching devourers. Instead, he found something else entirely. "Sir," called his sensor officer Lee Minjung, "I am reading massive energy signatures about 2 light years ahead, but they are not matching any devourer patterns from the Architect database." Kang Wusung leaned forward in his captain's chair. The Dauntless was humanity's most advanced ship, built using Architect technology and crewed by volunteers who knew they might never return home. Their mission was simple: find out everything they could about what waited in the deep void. "What kind of energy signatures?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. They are organic somehow, like they are alive." Kang Wusung made his decision quickly. "Set course for the energy source, maximum stealth systems. If something is alive out here, I want to meet it before it meets us." The journey took 18 hours at near light speed. As they approached the coordinates, the Dauntless sensors began detecting structures that were unlike anything in the Architect network. These were not artificial constructions, but rather living formations that pulsed with their own internal light. "My God," whispered his science officer, Park Hye-jin, as the main screen showed their destination. "What are those things?" Floating in the void were creatures the size of cities. They looked like jellyfish made of starlight, with tendrils that stretched for kilometers. Their bodies were translucent and filled with patterns of light that shifted and changed like thoughts made visible. "Sir, they have noticed us," Lee Minjung reported. "The nearest creature is changing course to intercept." "Raise shields, but do not charge weapons," Kang Wusung ordered. "Let us see what they want." The massive creature approached slowly, its tendrils moving in what seemed like a greeting gesture. As it came closer, the crew of the Dauntless could see that it was incredibly old. Its body was marked with scars that looked like the tracks of cosmic rays, and its light patterns had the deep complexity that came from eons of existence. Suddenly, the bridge filled with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It spoke directly into their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. "Welcome, young cousins. We have been waiting so long for someone to find us." The crew looked at each other in amazement. Park Hye-jin checked her instruments frantically. "Sir, the creature is communicating through quantum fluctuations in our brain chemistry. It is not telepathy exactly, but something similar." "We are the remnants," the voice continued. "The last physical descendants of those you call the Architects. We chose to remain in this form to watch for the hunger that comes from beyond," Kang Wusung found. His voice. "You are connected to the Architects? We have been living in their stations, learning their technology?" "Yes, we know. We felt the stations awakening when your species arrived. The Architects designed them to respond to intelligence and curiosity, qualities your kind possesses in great measure." "Why did you stay?" Park Hye-jin asked. "Why did you not transcend like the others?" The patterns of light within the creature shifted to deeper, sadder colors. "Someone had to remain to warn the next species that would inherit the burden. The transcended ones exist beyond time and space, but they cannot easily communicate with physical beings. We stayed to be the bridge between what was and what must be. Kang Wusung felt a chill run through him. The burden? You mean fighting the Devourers? The Devourers are not just destroyers, the Remnant explained. They are the universe trying to return to a state of perfect entropy. They consume complexity and consciousness, turning everything back into simple uniform void. They are not evil in any way you would understand. They are simply the end of all stories. The creature moved closer, and its tendrils brushed against the hull of the Dauntless. Where they touched, the ship's systems began to resonate with new information. The architects fought them for millions of years and learned much. The Devourers cannot be destroyed by force because they adapt to every weapon and every strategy. They cannot be reasoned with because they do not think as individuals. They cannot be escaped because they will pursue any source of complexity across the entire universe. Then how can they be stopped? Kang Wusung asked. They cannot be stopped, the Remnant said simply. But they can be redirected. The architects discovered that the Devourers follow paths of least resistance. They consume galaxies that are easy to find and easy to digest. Complex, chaotic, unpredictable systems require more energy to process. Park Hee-jin leaned forward. Are you saying that being unpredictable is a defense? In a sense, yes. The council species that rule your galaxy are ordered, predictable, stable. They would be easily consumed because they follow patterns the Devourers have encountered millions of times before. But your species is different. The light patterns within the creature began to pulse faster, almost excitedly. In all our observations, we have never encountered a species quite like yours. You make friends with your enemies. You help those who should be competitors. You take impossible risks for no logical reason. You create chaos wherever you go, not from malice, but from compassion. Kang Wusung thought about the Council's reasons for exiling humanity. Too unpredictable, too emotional, too willing to interfere with the natural order. The Council cast us out because of those qualities, he said. And in doing so, they may have saved the galaxy, the Remnant replied. Your species has been placed in exactly the position where it can do the most good. You control the barrier network that hides the galaxy. You have access to architect technology. And most importantly, you have the one quality that the Devourers have never learned to digest, the ability to care about others more than yourselves. Another voice joined the first, then another, as more remnants approached the ship. The void, filled with creatures of living light, each one ancient beyond human understanding. We have watched 17 galaxies die, they said together. We have seen species with technology far beyond yours attempt to fight the hunger. All failed because they tried to preserve themselves first and others second. The Devourers turned that instinct against them, using their self-preservation to predict their actions. But humans do the opposite, Park Hee-jin said with sudden understanding. We often put others first. Exactly. And that makes you unpredictable in a way the Devourers have never encountered. They cannot model a species that consistently acts against its own apparent interests for the benefit of others. Kang Wusung felt the weight of what the remnants were telling him. Humanity had not been exiled from civilized space. They had been positioned for the most important mission in galactic history. What do you need us to do? He asked. Learn everything the stations can teach you. Prepare your people for a war, unlike any in the history of the universe. And most importantly, remain true to the qualities that make you human. The moment you become predictable, you become digestible. The nearest remnant extended a tendril toward the ship, and Kang Woo-sung felt information flowing directly into his mind. Star charts showing the Devourer's approach, technical specifications for weapons that existed partially outside normal space-time, and something else, a sense of hope that he had not felt since the exile began. "We will help you prepare," the remnants promised. "We have waited millions of years for a species that could inherit the architect's legacy and improve upon it. The transcended ones chose to leave physical existence behind, but perhaps that was not the only solution. Perhaps the universe needs guardians who remain connected to physical reality." As the Dauntless prepared to return to the architect stations with this incredible news, Kang Woo-sung looked out at the remnants floating in the void. They had given up transcendence to remain as watchers and guides, sacrificing their own evolution for the good of others. It was exactly the kind of thing humans would do. "Send a priority message to Station Alpha," he told his communications officer. "Tell them we have found allies, and that everything is about to change." The deep void no longer seemed empty and hostile. It was filled with ancient guardians who had been waiting for humanity to find them. The Council had feared human unpredictability, but the universe itself had been waiting for it. The real war was about to begin. Shin Do-kyun stood before the massive construction bay and watched humanity build weapons of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Void Forge stretched for kilometers in every direction, its architect technology reshaping matter at the quantum level to create ships that existed partially outside normal space-time. "Production report," he called to his chief engineer, Han Yuan, who was floating nearby in a work suit covered with alien interfaces. 12 Void fighters completed this week," she replied, her voice crackling through the comm system. 23 planet-killer missiles ready for deployment, and the first reality anchor shield generator is almost online. Shin Do-kyun nodded with satisfaction. As humanity's former defense minister, he had spent his career preparing for wars against other humans or council species. Now he was building an arsenal to fight an enemy that could unravel the basic forces holding reality together. The Void Fighters were his favorite creation. They looked like normal human spacecraft from the outside, but inside they contained architect technology that allowed them to phase in and out of normal space. A pilot could disappear from one location and reappear anywhere within a 1,000-kilometer radius, making them impossible to target with conventional weapons. "How are our pilots adapting to the phase drives?" he asked. "Better than expected," Han Yuan said as she guided a massive piece of equipment into place with her suit's manipulator arms. "Humans seem to have an intuitive understanding of nonlinear space. The remnants say they have never seen a species adapt to multidimensional thinking so quickly. That was the strangest part of humanity's preparation for war. Every piece of architect technology they tried to use worked better in human hands than it had for its original creators. The remnants claimed it was because humans thought in chaos rather than patterns, making them naturally suited for weapons that broke the normal rules of physics." "Sir?" called a voice from the command center. Shin Do-kyun turned to see Bai Ji-young, his chief strategist, approaching with a datapad in her hands. "We have a problem." Bai Ji-young had been humanity's best military planner even before the exile. She had the rare gift of being able to think like the enemy, to predict their moves and counter them before they happened. But the Devourers were unlike any enemy she had ever studied. "What kind of problem?" Shin Do-kyun asked. "The deep void sensors are detecting increased activity at the edge of the barrier network," she replied. "The Devourers are not just approaching, they are testing our defenses." Shin Do-kyun felt his blood go cold. Testing how? Small probes, maybe the size of asteroids. They phase into the barrier field, analyze its structure, then phase out before our sensors can get a lock on them. They are learning how the architect network functions. This was exactly what Shin Dok-yun had been afraid of. The Devourers were not mindless destroyers. They were intelligent, adaptive, and patient. They would study humanity's defenses until they found a weakness, then strike with overwhelming force. How long before they are ready to attack? Unknown, Bai Ji-young admitted. But based on their probe frequency, I estimate we have between 6 months and 2 years. Shin Dok-yun looked back at the Void Forge and did quick calculations in his head. At current production rates, they could have maybe 1,000 ships ready in 6 months. The Devourers had consumed entire galaxies. They would have resources beyond human imagination. We need more production capacity, he decided. And we need allies. Allies? Bai Ji-young asked. The Council exiled us. They will not help even if we warn them about the Devourers. Not the Council, Shin Dok-yun said with a grim smile. The species that the Council has been oppressing for 10,000 years. The ones who serve as laborers and soldiers while the Seven make all the decisions. He activated the Forge's main communication system and opened a channel to Station Alpha. Young Somin's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. Somin, he said, I need you to authorize a covert mission back to Council space. We need to make contact with the Taurians, the Yelani, and the other servant species. If they knew what was coming, some of them might be willing to help. Young Somin was quiet for a moment, considering the risks. Any human caught in Council space would be arrested or killed. But if the Devourers broke through, everyone in the galaxy would die anyway. Approved, she said finally. But be careful. If the Council discovers what we are doing, they might try to shut down the barrier network. Meanwhile, Han Yewon was working on her own solution to the numbers problem. Deep in the Void Forge's research section, she was studying architect manufacturing techniques that could create automated shipyards. The technology was incredibly complex, requiring her to think in 12 dimensions simultaneously, but she was making progress. The key is recursive self-improvement, she explained to her team of engineers. We build a factory that builds factories that build factories. Each generation becomes more efficient than the last. Her assistant, a young man named Kim Hyun-woo, looked skeptical. Will it work fast enough? Even with exponential growth, we might not have enough ships before the Devourers attack. Then we make fewer ships but make them count more, Han Yewon replied. She activated a holographic display showing her latest design. A battleship that was more architect technology than human engineering. The ship could exist in multiple dimensions at once, allowing it to fire weapons from angles that did not exist in normal space. Its hull was made of programmable matter that could reshape itself to deflect attacks. Most importantly, it carried a weapon that the remnants had helped her design. A reality bomb that could erase sections of space-time from existence. One of these ships could destroy a planet, Kim Hyun-woo said in amazement. One of these ships could destroy a solar system, Han Yewon corrected. But the Devourers have consumed entire galaxies. We need to think bigger. She began working on her masterpiece, a weapon that the architect records called a dimensional cascade warhead. It would create a chain reaction in space-time itself, turning the Devourers' own mass against them. The calculations made her head hurt, but she pressed on. While the engineers worked on ships and weapons, Ryu Min-jae prepared for the most dangerous mission of all. He had volunteered to return to Council space and make contact with the oppressed species. It was a suicide mission, but someone had to try. Remember, Shin Dok-yeon told him as he prepared to board a stealth ship, do not try to convince the Council itself. They will never listen. Focus on the species that have been treated as second-class citizens. Tell them that humanity offers them a chance to be equals, not servants. Ryu Minjae nodded grimly. What if they do not believe me about the Devourers? Then tell them about the Architect stations. Show them that there is advanced technology available to those willing to leave Council space. Some of them might be desperate enough to take the chance. As Ryu Minjae's ship disappeared into the void barrier, Shin Dok-yeon returned to his work. The Void Forge hummed with activity as thousands of humans and architect machines worked together to create an arsenal that could fight gods. But even with all their preparations, Shin Dok-yeon knew they were still vastly outnumbered. The Devourers had consumed 17 galaxies. They had resources and experience that humanity could not match. Humanity's only advantage was the one quality that had gotten them exiled in the first place: their refusal to give up even when the odds were impossible. The Council had feared that unpredictability, but the universe needed it. Status report on the Dimensional Cascade Project? He called to Han Ye-won. Theoretical completion in 4 months, she replied. But I have never built a weapon that could crack reality itself. I am making this up as I go along. Good, Shin Dok-yeon said with a smile. If you knew exactly how to do it, the Devourers would be able to predict and counter it. Keep improvising. In the distance, the deep void sensors continued their vigilant watch. The Devourers were out there, learning and adapting and preparing. But so was humanity, and they were learning something the Devourers had never encountered before: how to fight with hope instead of logic, with love instead of self-preservation. The arsenal of chaos was taking shape, and soon it would be tested against an enemy that had never known defeat. Yoon Seojun felt the Void Fortress Defiance shudder as something that should not exist scraped against its reality-anchored hull. Through the bridge windows, he could see nothing but darkness, but his instruments screamed warnings about massive objects moving through dimensions that had no names. All stations, battle alert, he commanded, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his mind. This is not a drill. The Devourers have found us. The Defiance was humanity's greatest creation, a fortress ship the size of a small moon that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Its weapons could reshape space-time itself, and its shields could deflect attacks from angles that did not exist in normal reality. But as Yoon Seojun watched his sensors, he realized that nothing could have prepared them for this. Sir, called his tactical officer, a pale young woman named Im Na-young. I am reading multiple contacts approaching through the void barrier, but they are not coming through normal space. What do you mean? Yoon Seojun asked, though he suspected he did not want to know the answer. They are coming through the spaces between spaces, Im Na-young replied, her voice shaking. They exist, in dimensions we do not have words for. The Architect sensors are barely detecting them. Yoon Seojun activated the fortress's main display, and what he saw made his blood freeze. The Devourers were not ships or creatures in any sense that humans understood. They were vast geometries of hunger that moved through the deep structure of reality itself. They looked like mathematical equations made flesh, if flesh could exist in 12 dimensions at once. How many? He asked quietly. Unknown, sir. They do not have discrete boundaries. I think they might all be parts of the same entity. This was what the remnants had warned them about. The Devourers were not a species or an army. They were a single consciousness that existed across multiple galaxies, consuming everything in their path and incorporating it into their own vast being. "Fire control," Yoon Seo-jun ordered. "Begin targeting solutions. Use the multi-dimensional scanners." His weapons officer, Cho Seul-gi, worked frantically at her console. "Sir, the targeting computers cannot get a lock. The contacts keep shifting between dimensions. It is like trying to aim at a shadow that moves through walls." Then, "We improvise," Yoon Seo-jun said grimly. "All weapons area saturation fire. If we cannot target them precisely, we hit everything." The Defiance unleashed hell. Reality bombs exploded in patterns that turned space inside out. Dimensional cascade missiles created chain reactions in the fabric of existence itself. Void cannons fired streams of weaponized nothingness that erased anything they touched from the universe. For a moment, Yoon Seo-jun thought they were winning. The massive geometries of the Devourers flickered and wavered under the assault. But then they began to adapt. "Sir," Im Na-young reported with horror in her voice, "they are learning from our attacks. Each weapon we fire becomes less effective than the last." Yoon Seo-jun watched in fascination and terror as the Devourers' forms shifted and changed. They were literally evolving defenses against humanity's weapons in real time, turning each attack into information that made them stronger. "All ships in the defense grid, randomize your firing patterns," he commanded. "Do not use the same weapon twice. Keep them guessing." Across the void barrier, hundreds of human ships joined the battle. Void fighters phased in and out of dimensions, striking at the Devourers from impossible angles. Battleships armed with reality-warping weapons fired at targets that existed in spaces between spaces. It was a battle that broke every law of physics humanity had ever discovered, but the Devourers were learning faster than humanity could adapt. For every new tactic the humans tried, the enemy found a counter-move within minutes. Ships began disappearing, not in explosions but in ways that were worse. They were simply edited out of existence, as if they had never been built at all. "Sir," Cho Seul-gi called out, "we are losing ships faster than we can replace them, and the Devourers are not taking any permanent damage. They regenerate from each attack stronger than before." Yoon Seo-jun realized with growing horror that they were not just losing the battle, they were feeding the enemy. Every weapon they fired, every ship they lost, every tactical innovation they tried was being absorbed by the Devourers and made part of their vast intelligence. Then he heard a voice in his mind, speaking through the quantum communication systems that connected all human ships. "Commander Yoon," came the voice of Lee Ariam from her position on Station Alpha. "I am detecting something in the Architect network. The stations are responding to the battle." Lee Ariam had been changed by her exposure to Architect technology. She could perceive dimensions that other humans could not see and communicate with the ancient network in ways that seemed almost magical. If anyone could find a solution, it would be her. "What kind of response?" Yoon Seo-jun asked while directing his ship to avoid an attack that came from 7 directions at once. "The network is awakening something that has been sleeping for millions of years. The architects left behind more than just defensive stations. They left behind a consciousness, a guardian mind that was designed to activate when the Devourers finally found the galaxy. Can it help us?" "It is trying to communicate, but the process is overwhelming my mind. I am seeing the memories of every battle the architects ever fought. The victories and the defeats. The weapons that worked and the ones that failed. Through the battle, Yoon Seojin felt a new presence emerging from the architect network. It was vast and ancient, and filled with the accumulated wisdom of a species that had fought the devourers for millions of years before choosing transcendence. Young guardians, the architect consciousness spoke to every human mind simultaneously. You fight well, but you fight as your enemy expects. The devourers consume order and strategy. They digest logic and planning. You must become the opposite of everything they understand. How? Yoon Seojin asked as another wave of ships vanished from existence. Chaos, the architect mind replied. Pure, beautiful, impossible chaos. Do not think. Do not plan. Simply act on instinct and emotion. Let every captain choose their own targets. Let every pilot follow their heart instead of their training. Become completely unpredictable. It went against everything Yoon Seojin had learned about military strategy. Battles were won through coordination and planning, not through random action. But as he watched the devourers adapt to every tactical move humanity made, he realized that conventional thinking would never work against an enemy that consumed conventional thinking. All ships, he broadcast, new orders, forget your training, forget your targets, follow your instincts. If you feel like attacking something, attack it. If you feel like retreating, retreat. If you feel like doing something impossible, do it. Make no sense. Be completely random. The change was immediate and dramatic. Human ships began moving in patterns that defied military logic. Some attacked head-on while others ran away. Some fired everything they had while others held back. Some tried to ram the devourers while others attempted to hide behind them, and for the first time since the battle began, the devourers hesitated. They cannot predict chaos, Lee Ariam reported, with wonder in her mental voice. They can adapt to any strategy, but they cannot adapt to the complete absence of strategy. The battle turned into something that looked more like a cosmic dance than a military engagement. Human ships moved like schools of fish, responding to each other's emotions rather than orders. They attacked and retreated based on feelings rather than tactics, and slowly, impossibly, they began to win. The devourers' perfect adaptability became a weakness when there was nothing logical to adapt to. Their vast intelligence was useless when faced with pure emotional chaos. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Hundreds of ships were lost, and tens of thousands of humans died. The void barrier itself was damaged, allowing the devourers to establish a foothold in normal space. As the surviving enemy forces retreated to regroup, Yoon Seojin looked at his damage reports and realized the truth. This had not been the real battle. It had been a probe, a test to see what kind of defenses humanity could mount. The real war was just beginning. The devourers are learning, the architect consciousness warned. They will adapt to chaos just as they adapted to order. You have bought time, but not much. How much time? Yoon Seojin asked. Enough to prepare for the final battle, but when they return, they will bring the full force of their collective intelligence. Everything they have learned from consuming 17 galaxies will be turned against you. As the Defiance limped back toward the architect stations for repairs, Yoon Seojin realized that humanity's greatest test still lay ahead. They had proven that chaos could defeat order, but could they maintain that chaos when the very survival of the galaxy depended on it?